Hi, this is Asim.
This is Sujoy.
This is Amrita.
And you're listening to Khandaan, a Bollywood podcast about the three main Khans of the Hindi film industry.
Amir,
Salman,
And Shara.
Hi, you're listening to Khandaan, a Bollywood podcast regular feed. Thank you so much for your support over the years. We now have a Patreon channel with bonus content and exclusive merch for those of you who would like to support us. Every dollar goes towards creating more and better content. Visit us at patreon.com/Khandaan podcast.
Hi and welcome to a new episode of Khandaan Podcast. My name is Asim Bernie and I'm joined with my lovely co-hosts Amrita and Sujoy. Hey Amrita, hey Sujoy.
hey everybody.
Hello.
This week we are talking about Rang De Basanti.
I cannot believe that people on Twitter were pointing me out to be the biggest hater when Asim Bernie exists.
Why am I a hater? I was just saying, this is Khandan's continuous election coverage that's going on in India. This is a 2-week event. We started with Amar Akbar Anthony. We're ending with Rang De Basanti. And Amrita and Sujoy, let's talk about it now. We want to get into it a little bit. How are your feelings after a week of...
Take a step back. A hater of what? Hater of what?
Yes. Amrita just has her guns ready. Like, ye kuch Amir pe kuch kahega, kuch karega.
No, it was actually Shah on Twitter, and he was like, "This is my favorite movie, and I've been living in dread for years that Amrita is going to make me hate it."
Oh, Amrita will make you hate it. Like, I have questions that I have for Amrita later on.
Very funny.
And I gotta say, I was thinking of getting Shah on the show, but the time zones were just not working out. Apologies, Shah. I was really considering, and I also realized, for being such long friends with Shah, we haven't had him on the show for a while, so we need to change that a little bit too. By the way, Shah is doing some great work. Check out his stuff. Like, he's like really fully like covering like nerdy, sci-fi, superhero stuff, and all the love to Shah. He does some great work and great writing.
And he's also doing the Bollywood drafts thing with Manish. And it's going to be like Nim and Shah and like a couple of, and I think Kathy Gibson, if I'm not mistaken.
And our friend Yamini is also going to be there for another episode, I think. And I just love it because it's just taking over their lives. It's just like, and remember, Amrita, you and me went on it, and we're going to go again soon. Yes. We just kind of like walk through it.
we Khandaan podcasted it. Like, we just like put up and we're like...
He's like doing homework. You don't know how stressed Yamini has been for weeks. She's been talking to me about it. मैं ये करेगी, मैं वो करेगी.
Meanwhile, we are like, ये लो, ये कर ले.
Yeah. We were yesterday at the March for Palestine, and it was like, free, and Yamini was like, yeah, agar Karan Arjun ye karungi, to phir Salman yahan pe. It's like, Palestine. We love her. We love our Yamini. Yes, Sujoy, you were taking a step back. You wanted to talk about something. What were you talking about?
No, I didn't know what the hate was. Why are we calling Asim the biggest hater of what?
So let's get into like the elections. We wanted to talk a little. You guys have feelings. How do you feel? How are you feeling now? Like, without getting, I don't want to get political, except the things that I care about, like politics. Like, those are the things I care about. I can get into it. But the things you care about, I care less about. No, I just want to say, I am not involved in it. It's not my country. Sometimes people might forget that I'm not Indian or Pakistani. So I also feel there's like a little bit, I don't need to meddle in your stuff. And also, I just don't know. Like, I think a lot of people were cheering. A lot of people were sad. And they're like, this region was lost and that region was lost, and मेरी geography इतनी strong नहीं है India के बारे में. And I think we will actually get into it when we talk about Rang De Basanti. But yeah, like, how are you guys feeling? Feeling good?
Well, good is a overstatement, I guess, because of how the state of things are. But oddly optimistic after the results. Like we were at least I was expecting on my end for things to continue for the worse, or compound in a way that the the overarching majority of the BJP as a single ruling party would expand even more, is what I thought. But as everybody more articulate and more knowledgeable on Twitter has already said about what these election results actually mean and what they say about the Indian democracy, that it is still living, that the people have answered in some way, and even after the stronghold over the mainstream media and how they peddled that particular message that up ki baar 400 par for BJP, and they will even the opposition is going to be turned into just a second fiddle, not even a second fiddle, but much worse. But that has completely backfired, and the BJP by themselves could not form a single majority, and they have to enter into a coalition. So that whole outcry of the Modi Sarkar and Modi ki guarantee, all of that has been reduced into Narendra Modi being the front face of still the BJP Sarkar. It's not a BJP Sarkar even. He's had to say NDA Sarkar repeatedly from day one since the results. So that's the big change that has come through. And for children who have sort of awakened to the world of Indian politics over the last decade or so, they will now get to see what a chaos of coalition sort of plays into our daily lives, and how that changes the narrative. Like the big, swings that the BJP Sarkar or Modi Sarkar took without consulting any of coalition governments, because they could, demonetization and the big revolutionary, very, very controversial and life-threatening changes over the COVID lockdown period. They cannot do that anymore because there's coalition parties that they have to take care to and consult and appease to, and although their demands they have to take care as well. And I have not seen what sort of ministries each of the coalition parties have been given, but that'd be interesting to see. So we have lived through a lot of the coalition governments before the BJP came into power with Narendra Modi. So that'd be interesting to see what that means. And yeah, that's what it is.
I think it's going to take a long time for me to feel happy about this country again. Like that has pretty much gone away over the last 10 years, and it's going to take me a while to get back to that place. But at least now I feel like I can get to that place, because up until leading up to the elections, same as Joy, like everyone had this sort of dread going in that that's how it's going to be now and forever. Like Modi was literally talking about 1,000-year strategy. Like he wasn't even like I have plans for 2029. He was like, for the next 1,000 years we are going to be like this. And that was awful. And it's nice to know that this country is still one that I recognize, because for a while there I was like, I don't know who these people are, and I don't know what this country is. And I also had this thought, and I had this after I was watching Rang De Basanti, because I think Rang De Basanti was the last great anti-establishment mainstream movie that came out of Bollywood. Like I honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, because I honestly couldn't think of anything that was like this, like an event movie that invited people to activism against the establishment.
Jawan, technically, right?
Well, I'll come to Jawan. Yeah. But after Rang De Basanti, after that, and Rang De Basanti really synced in with all that anti-corruption, like why isn't the government doing better? The politician business nexus, like all that kind of stuff, that sort of led into the second UPA government, and then like everyone sort of coming together, Anna Hazare doing his his Andolan, like all that stuff, the rise of AAP, all of that stuff that happened. I couldn't really think of anything else that came out of it, and that made me think movies like Rang De Basanti or The Angry Young Man, or movies of Amitabh Bachchan in the 70s, they sort of function as a release valve for people who are frustrated and can see that things are not working well.
Mhm.
But the BJP, in their quest to sort of lock down the arts and culture movement for something that was more aligned to themselves,
Yeah.
they went the other direction and like really made everything propaganda, and therefore it was no longer possible for the common man to see their frustrations portrayed on screen and therefore blow off that steam in cinema. And therefore, they took all that tension and they basically took it to the vote. And they were
Yeah.
just like, well, they literally had nobody representing their voice for 10 long years, no matter what went wrong. People were getting lynched, people are unemployed, inflation is through the roof. Like, so many things are happening. Like, people are starving to death. And they're just like, everything's great. Like, like, yay, we built a temple. That's great.
Yeah.
And like, they literally had nothing going on for them, not even a man on screen saying that this sucks. And to a lot of people, that's all they wanted. Like, throughout the 70s, that's all Amitabh Bachchan did. Like, his entire career was built on him basically standing up there and saying, this sucks. And I'm gonna screw some shit up so that I feel better about it. Like, that was it. And the BJP wouldn't even give the people that much. And I think that really backfired to them, or at least that's what I'm like. I literally had this thought this morning, so I haven't really thought it through. I don't have like a reasoned argument to present for this, but
This is why we're podcasters. We don't need
Yes.
research. We just
Yes.
work on vibes
Yeah.
and guts,
Yes.
I mean, just my point of view, I think it's, I was raised in Belgium. Not like I live in the UK now, and Belgium pretty much always works with coalition governments. They've never been able to have like a one party majority rule. And I just don't think one person being like a king is ever good for any country.
Yeah.
I live here in the UK and I see it with kind of a two-party oppositional parliament setup, and I don't think it's conducive to this country at all. And I think they should also get rid of it. And on the other hand, Belgium has the record of a country that had no government for 541 days. And you know what happened? Nothing. Everything went really well. So in a way, it does not matter.
Yeah.
And what I care about is that what Amrita, you were mentioning, this political stronghold on the culture it had, right? And the only thing I happen with the coalition is I hope Takht gets made now. That's what I care about. The things I care
that
about.
was like the number one thing that I think all of us on Bollywood Twitter were thinking about, because the moment it came out and everybody was just like, does this mean that we'll get to see Takht now?
Yeah.
Not just Takht, but like critical movies, more freedom of expression in movies rather than more Kashmir Files, in a way. And also one happy thing that I immediately saw is that election results day, everybody was on Twitter. We were like the memes were firing on all guns, and what we usually see is the reply from the IT cell, the bots come blazing, but this time around it has been quite tepid. And that's a very big change, because all their attention, all their resources are now, being spent on something else rather than fueling the hate machine on Twitter. So that's great.
And there haven't been any of the usual congratulations and the tweets and the Instagram stories that are sort of copy paste.
Yeah.
and sent to all the celebrity PRs. That didn't
Yeah.
happen this time.
Yeah, because I don't see necessarily like a happy face in the Indian government, even when they have been selected as the party that will be ruling. I don't see a single happy face in there. Like all their faces are just down and low, which is great.
So let's take it back to 2006, right? Let's take it back to when Rang De Basanti came out. It's the era of low-rise jeans, big belts, haircuts like Avril Lavigne, that kind of era. And it's also kind of like, the start of the decline of journalism. You can literally see it in this movie, like we don't have money left, Rang De Basanti is a weird one for me because I was pretty much moving countries at that time, and it also just like kind of brought me back to where I was in 2006 when I was rewatching this movie. Is like I was living in Amsterdam and I was going to move to London. We didn't have internet the way we do now, and I think that's something that is very illustrative in Rang De Basanti.
Yeah.
Actually, in 2006, and I went to Wikipedia to check this, Twitter launched in 2006, and Google bought YouTube in 2006. And I think those are just pivotal moments of how we engage with content, how we engage with politics, how we kind of make shows and stories, how we tell our stories, right? Like Khandaan wouldn't exist. And the weirdest part for me was the realization in 2006, I had no Indian friends. I had zero Indian friends. And now 90% of my friends are Indian friends. You guys just spread like wildfire. Like, like ek ko andar aane do na, you just like take over the whole country, right? Kya hai ye chakkar?
Once Geo internet came through, just we are in everybody's household.
Yeah.
We are Akhand Bharat is in like Kasim's contact list.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
But it's interesting to say about the rise of internet and internet applications. Like we did have internet, we had Yahoo Mail and all that. But it's interesting to see that how in Rang De Basanti there is not a single internet operated device. Nobody does a Google search in this movie. Nobody has any sort of. They are all reading like printed scripts. They are all there. There is not even a laptop in a scene. Everybody's operating on a dumb phone of a Nokia, and Anupam Kher calls his son the SMS generation. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting to see that, a throwback to that part of the 2000s where we were just on the verge of exploring YouTube and internet bandwidth hadn't caught up yet in India. So
if I'm not mistaken, this is the movie also that during their promotions, there was this whole PR cycle about Amir owning a laptop and the laptop being like very
compact.
amazing, blah blah, and it was like a Dell or something.
No.
I don't like. I can't remember, but like I think like this was a movie. Anyway, I'm sorry. You were saying.
So that's what I wanted to get into actually, because I was moving, I was in that transition. Literally, the only way I was reading about in Desi Bollywood content was Beth's blog, which probably Amrita and me crossed paths without even knowing each other, which is really weird when you think about it, because she was already writing. Because back in Paris, I was already commenting on her blogs, so that's how long this has been going on.
Top and Beth.
Yeah, Top and Beth. And I had no idea how the cultural impact of this movie was. I got to know this much, much later on. And I think, Sujoy, you and me were discussing this yesterday. What was it like in India when this movie came out?
For me, like I was in my early 20s when this movie came out, right? I had just left university, undergrad. I started working. I was in Pune. I remember this, but it's still in that, college zone of like hanging out with the bros, and we went to watch it. And the vibe, the promotion of this movie was like a bro movie, right? All the guys, that whole shot of them jumping in the khet with the fighter jet, shirts off, and the fighter jet flying. That's a very bro poster, right? And like that was the vibe, the Masti Ki Pathshala and all of that. That was the promotional message, and we went expecting that sort of a movie. And I remember even my managers the next day after this, like the weekend after this movie release, I think it was the Republic Day weekend, and then when we rejoined work, and my manager sat down and was like, "Maine teen baar dekhi." Everybody was talking about this movie, of how much it affected them, and like how much they were blown away by this movie. Of um, they did not expect that change, that journey that this movie takes you on. Because this, like the cinema landscape when this movie came out, was the dhooms and the krish and all of that hum tumhare hai sanam, very very Bollywood, right? And this movie begins like any other typical bros hanging out, and then takes you on this journey of how they sort of take a life of their own, and the sort of existentialness, and how they find themselves, in a way, the purpose of youth and all of that, and then obviously addressing the reality of the country at that point in time. Yeah, all of that really resonated, like to a 20-year-old me then.
What about you, Amrita?
I actually saw this movie in New York. Like I had just graduated as well, and like I was like a young person finding my way in the world. And I remember taking like my American friend to watch this with me. And both of us had like so much to discuss after the end of it. Like she had no context for any of this, like any of the history or like what was happening. And but it was just like a really, really interesting period, because I would talk to my friends back in India, and like you said, like there was no social media back then, so it was like literally blogs and forums.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you guys remember the Bollywood forum,
Yeah.
which
Planet Bollywood. That was my go-to place to read like reviews, like a proper review.
And Passion for Cinema, do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was like where all the film bros who were like the worst used to hang out.
I read Passion for Cinema, and very quickly I was like, no, I don't vibe with these people.
They were just like the worst people. But like like Ram Gopal Verma and like Anurag Kashyap and like all of them would like write on that website, and it was like a really cool resource to like just understand what was happening. And I just remember like even people who were otherwise not interested in Hindi cinema, and this includes my friends back in India, would write to me and be like, "Hey, have you watched this movie? Because like it's great." Like my parents wanted to go watch this movie, they'd heard so much about it. Like this movie was a sensation, and it's squarely in the middle of that period of time when Amir wasn't just making, like we talk about like how Amir was so successful and he was making these blockbusters, but Amir was also setting the conversation at that point, like whatever he was doing, whether it's this movie or whether it was Three Idiots, he was setting the national conversation at the time.
He was changing cinema. Like, people were looking,
not just cinema, but like he was trying to use cinema to change the culture or like affect it, like with Three Idiots, he was talking about the kind of pressures we put upon our children and how it's important for kids to have their own path in life. With Rang De Basanti, again, he was like talking about bigger things than just the movie. And this was really the era that cemented Amir's reputation as, I make fun of him all the time for this, but like Bollywood Jesus, where he'd just sort of come and he'd be like, "Listen to me, children, I have wisdom." And as annoying and irritating as I find it when he is talking in real life like that, I also think that he did a really great job when it comes to making cinema that followed his philosophy. And it was a very like secular, liberal, ideology that you can see in these movies, and they just don't make movies like that anymore.
It was also like Amir's "I'm a hot bitch" era, because like pretty much like all his movies, like all the bitches are into me. Like everybody's really into me, because he had Fana that dropped exactly the same year. This actually Fana made more money than Rang De Basanti. So this year we had Dhoom 2, Krish, Lage Raho Munna Bhai, Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, Dawn, Fana, Fir Hera Pheri, Baham Bah, Viva. This is the top 10 of
That was a good year. That was a good year.
like for a year now, 2024, where we have nothing to talk about. Munjia is the biggest hit, right? Like this is like, compared with 2006, like not only in terms of like good movies, big budget movies, like mounted movies with stars that have things to say. Like even Dhoom 2, it's a nothing burger chase cop movie, but it's still meme to this day. Every day you'll see Hrithik taking off the Queen Elizabeth costume, right? Like, or being a statue every other day. 70% are, Sujoy reposting the same memes, but it is still very, very relevant,
I keep the relevance.
But I also like, I this is kind of one question. I was watching it and I was wondering, how much do you feel the politics has been outdated? How much has it changed? Because I feel the conversations about politics now are much more complex and nuanced than they used to be. When I was watching Rang De Basanti, it almost feels very like centrist dad kind of politics, like very like center left, right? Make the country better, join the police, join the army. And I'm like, yeah, both of those institutions are corrupt and are harmful, like so many years later. And I am literally, I should be a centrist dad. I am a dad, but I cannot be a centrist. This is just like, there's something that shifted in that generation of Rakesh Omprakash when he made this movie, and where he stood about nationalism and what matters, to where I am as a dad so many years later. And there's so many elements just feel, this wouldn't work. What the movie is professing you to do, I do not believe in it. I don't know. What do you think about that, Sujoy?
It's difficult to say how that politics has changed or not, but obviously I think rather than the message being, oh, we will join the IAS, the civil services, we will build the country from ground up, because the country is already in tatters, since the independence. Nobody's taken care of the system is rotten, basically, right? But the extreme solution to that they take is, shoot the bad apples in a way. That has definitely not struck a chord with me. But also, I think the message that I get from this movie is that, as my 20-year-old self and me watching it now, yesterday, what I get is more and more people need to be involved in politics. Like, that's not a luxury that we can afford anymore. Like, if you're being apolitical at this day and age, then that is like extreme privilege that I don't know who can afford that at this day and age, right? And
ये तो तूने नाचने वाली बात कर ली. Archie's, that.
Everything is political, Veronica. Something like that. Yeah, that's what that whole. I think what I take from this movie is the life that this movie takes after after the movie has ended, right? And the way that India in 2006 evolved from then, after Rang De Basanti, in the Anna Hazare movement, in the whole the Jessica Lal murder case, specifically, like how that sort of movement completely got propagated because of the events that were depicted in this movie, and also what India went through after that, the NDA government and all of that, and the whole the whole Krantikari movement, what Krantikari the difference between Krantikari and terrorism is, and all of that is what I take from this movie. So there is sort of a muddy politics that this movie conveys that I pick and choose what to necessarily learn from this movie in a way.
It's also funny that all of the characters that they portray are now being remade into movies or characters, and they're getting co-opted now by the right wing as their figures, right? Where in this movie that's not the case. They were just like Indian freedom fighters, but now they're like right wing nationalistic kind of things. So Amrita, what do you think about the kind of outdated politics, or maybe you don't feel it's the case?
I always think of I've always had this opinion that the politics of Rang De Basanti, it's very carefully constructed to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, because Amir Khan is not an idiot, and he knows exactly what he's doing. Like, that man really understands the value of a script. And therefore, I always think of the politics of this film in the history of India. Like, and I don't think this is what Amir intended, but in the history of India, I think of the politics of this movie as transitional. It sort of bridges what India used to be and what India is today. And it's sort of like allowed a way for the right wing to co-opt these figures.
Yeah.
You know, like, it opened that door. And it does it in very subtle ways that I don't even know if they meant to do it consciously, you know. Because when you look at, because what they do is, like, they sanitize these figures, right? Like, for example, Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh was an atheist. He was a member of the Communist Party, if I'm not mistaken. He literally wrote a book that said, you know, this is why I'm an atheist.
You see him reading Lenin, though.
Yeah. एक क्रांतिकारी की दूसरे क्रांतिकारी के साथ मीटिंग हो रही है.
But he was like a lot more, like, the reason why these people were violent freedom fighters rather than your non-violent Gandhian, you know, freedom fighters, is because they were leftists. And leftist ideology said, shit up. Like, get out there and throw that Molotov cocktail. Like, shoot somebody if, like, you know, that's the only way that you can get your point across. You cannot divorce them from their politics or sanitize their politics to make them more palatable and then be like, oh, like, how are they getting co-opted? They're getting co-opted because you divorced them from their politics and you made people believe. And, like, to a lot of people in India, this truly was their introduction to what these people were like politically. That sounds dumb to, like, people who are interested in politics, but there truly are so many people who genuinely do not understand anything about politics and have no real understanding of history.
But that's also just the power of cinema in a way, right? I always kind of think of The Social Network. How many people watch that movie and think this is who Mark Zuckerberg was, or this is how Facebook was invented, right? And I think it's the same problem with Rang De Basanti to a certain degree. People watch it and this is how it's kind of like burnt into their brains now. And at that time, especially, we didn't even have access to all of the different voices that we have access to now. And I think that's such a big thing where people is like, yeah, everybody is woke and everybody has a voice. But yeah, that's the thing. Everybody now has a voice instead of the few filmmakers and the few narratives and the few things that you could listen to. And I think that's kind of the biggest shift that's happened in these last, 20, 30 years.
And I think... yeah, I think this sort of led to this creeping recasting of Indian history as Hindu history, you know? And it's weird too, because I see this on, like, Pakistani Twitter as well, where you're talking about, like, things like before, like, 1947, right? And then Pakistanis are like, oh, but, like, that's like an Indian thing. And I'm like, no, like, that was, like, your thing as well as our thing. Like, you have equal right to that kind of history. It's not just us. But the thing is, again, when you are born on that side of the border and you are dependent upon cinema, in the absence of like literature, because like now we don't really do literature, but so it is cinema that is sort of reinforcing your identities, that is informing you of your history, that is making you feel some type of way about who you are and how you locate yourself. um it becomes like, like, this is what I mean, like it just sort of like recasts history as like, this is like our history. It's not like, like your history, like,
Yeah.
you do your thing.
But
And
I think that's a strong point, because I think there is also erasure, because it's an
yeah,
Indian narrative, be it Hiramandi or be it Rang De Basanti. There
yeah,
is no space for Pakistan or Bangladesh within that context, right? There's a bit of Muslims in there, which I just thought was very fascinating, where Om Puri says to the kids when they barge in, is like, "Hamara bahut bura waqt ho raha hai," you know? And I was like, bloody hell, that was 2006. Acha waqt kab aaya Musalmanon ke liye India mein, like things only got progressively worse, and that was just kind of a sad thing. But I think it's similar to what's kind of, you're right. Pakistan cannot, it doesn't feel it's even allowed to be part of that conversation to a certain degree. It's, in a way, it's the same thing with Arabia and pre-Islamic civilizations. When Islam kind of came in, Arabia is almost not even able to talk about what was before that. And I think sometimes, a lot of time, with Pakistan is the same thing. We don't have any context, because obviously the cinema landscape, or the kind of the cultural landscape, is not there to be able to make these kind of movies or have these kind of conversation, at least in cinema. And if it's on drama, then you only just go into the villages in a very small scale of what is going on, be it how women are treated, or how the feudal system was pushing on people, but it's never a larger thing. And the stories that can be told in India, but then Pakistan or any of that struggle, or the Bengali struggle, is just not part of it.
and that's really weird to me, because like Bhagat Singh, like he was a Punjabi. Like he like that was his identity. Like it wasn't like like I'm an Indian, or like like that is completely foreign to him. And like this movie does a really great job of sort of saying that, oh, like secularism is good, like we are all like together. The right wing person also, like by the end of the movie, like the scales fall from his eyes, and he's like, oh, I see, like the Muslims aren't the problem, it is corruption that is the problem. We are all part of like one country, kumbaya, blah blah blah. But in all of that, again, like the sanitization of that message to make it more palatable to a wider audience means that we don't spend any time really critically thinking about like what is it and what went wrong really on a cultural level, on an interpersonal level. Why was it so easy for us to descend into riots and violence against each other, rather than like we killed more of each other than we killed the British, and the British were the ones who were like colonizing us, and we like waved them out with like a nice little band parade from Gateway of India.
There's literally no mention. They get the red carpet rolled out for them every time they come back. Still now, like they didn't colonize us for 300, 200 years. Like it's insane to me. I go crazy about these things. Like
and meanwhile, like Pakistani can't come to India, and then India can't like go to Pakistan. Like it's just like everybody is just like waiting there to like kill each other. Like
we cannot have a Khandaan meetup.
Yeah.
No Khandaan meetup in Bombay because of this.
That's true of this movie as well. When Sue McKinley arrives in Delhi, everybody's just flocking to her, and she's the pretty princess in white, and
her grandfather was literally the guy that was like pulling the lever of these guys.
I felt so sad when I tortured him to death, and all of that shit. And then Sue has that scene where Amir and Atul Kulkarni's character, they are fighting. Lakshman and DJ, they are fighting, and she was like, "I have been so stupid to have come here. You guys just want to kill yourselves."
Yeah.
See, this is like the classic Indian liberal, right? Like that is like everything that like that this entire like line of thought. Like you can just see both like Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra and Amir Khan going like, "हाँ, like ये क्या है? हम ऐसे क्यों हैं?" Like I'm just like, there is a reason. There is a reason that you're too cowardly to like examine.
There was a specific point where that stood out for me is when Sue cannot find her Bismil, right? Her is it Ram Prasad?
Yeah.
Bismil?
Ram Prakash, yeah.
And she cannot find him, and then Atul Agnihotri comes in and he knows the poem by heart, and he's like crying and emotional, and she's like, he's the one. And they get into a fight because Aslam doesn't want him there. Like Aslam doesn't fight, Amir comes in to kind of like protect him, and he calls him a Pakistani and all that kind of stuff. Aslam doesn't do anything, doesn't lift, even when he's getting beat up by all of the cops. Aslam is the only one that's not fighting back. He's just lying like dead weight on the thing because he cannot fight back. Like there's no way where he can say something back or anything, because that's the politics of the movie. But immediately after, they get together and agree to make the movie. And I was like, this is where I wanted to hear what is the convincing argument for these two people to come together and make this movie. And that's just glanced over. You know, like it's
because the white lady got Ruto, you know, so DJ comes to manao her and everything is kumbaya then after that.
Yeah, but why do Aslam and, what's Atul Agnihotri's name? I don't even
Lakshman.
know. Like, why do they get along suddenly? You know, why do they?
They don't.
They don't,
Throughout the making of the movie, you see that even Lakshman is very hesitant to eat beside him. There's still like tension between them. They are along on this project to make this movie just because they want to please this white lady. But then that eventual character build up for Lakshman and Aslam to bond is because of the protest when Aslam gets beat up and Lakshman sees that his own party leader is behind this whole thing and his belief system entirely crashes down, and then he opposes the party leader and he beats him up. That's when his realization happens. And then when he visits Aslam's house, he has so much shame hanging on his shoulders, and he has a moment. He waits for everybody to leave because he's that embarrassed, and he personally tells sorry to Aslam. That's the moment when that shift happens. I think it doesn't happen instantaneously.
And what's interesting about that entire thing is that animosity of that kind, or like communalism, or whatever you want to call it, it's shown in this movie to be a personal failing or an individual failing rather than a structural issue. And therefore and this is my problem again with the ending of this movie. Like I was one of the people that had a problem with the ending or the solution of this movie because it sees the fundamental issues of this film. And I'm not talking about the corruption issue, but I'm talking about the larger issues that you can see, the societal issues. It sees those as like personal quirks or like individual issues. The resolution is also individualistic, and it is not like these people all die at the, spoilers for people who haven't seen it. It's been 18 years, get a clue. But everyone dies at the end, and like what changes? Like everyone learns to go do a candlelight vigil. Like that's basically what this movie, like when you really boil it down, like that was the impact of this movie. Like it taught people how to go on a candlelight vigil.
It's also interesting watching it because obviously the Atul Agnihotri character, it's really showing the rise of the Saffron Brigade, right? Like, I mean, in cinema, like I can't remember, like there was Bombay and there were all of these other movies that did it, but visually you can see the rise of the orange color that Sujoy is wearing at this moment.
I've got
but
Japanese text on it though.
but also it's always interesting with this kind of like liberal centrist point of view, is that they want to equate things as equals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go to Aslam's house, you see his brother, who is like a very kind of like hateful Muslim, right? As an opposition to Atul Agnihotri Lakshman's kind of hateful Hindu, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one is hiding in a house
Yeah.
and doesn't come out,
Yeah.
and the other is just beating up students left and right. So the equality message doesn't necessarily gel for me in that sense, right? Because obviously one is an oppressed minority, so it's not about then equals, right? It's not like, oh, both sides mein hota hai, dono taraf hota hai, you know?
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I see the brother and the like his sort of outlook is that we have always been oppressed. This is the culture, we live through it. I don't know why you make friends with the other people. So I see always him as being a victim of being oppressed for many years. I don't know the backstory of why he is the way he is, or the life that he's led to for him to lead that sort of lead the movie with that dialogue, right? And we don't get to see much of Lakshman's story either, but he believes in the things that he believes because he's empowered by the Shakha or the party that he's done. But he also believes in some sort of a idealistic, India that he has in his mind. So he has the upper hand, I think, cinematically. That's being shown. I don't think they're in a way equal, as you said.
Yeah, I feel it's like, both sides hate each other kind of thing. Like, that like, oh, wahan bhi galat log hai, yahan bhi galat log hai, right? And if we all just get together on a project, things will work out well. But I think what Amrita is saying is that no, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
It's not just like these individuals. And I think Om Puri's character is speaking much more from a fear-based position. Like, he's worried about his kid, worried what will happen if he, goes with these other kids and gets drunk and stuff like that. Whereas his brother has a more kind of like, like, oh, we want our own thing, create your own world. So I think that's where I think the movie wants to make equal both of these point of views. But yeah, I think it is kind of an individual thing, but maybe they are trying to make a larger point by, zooming into these individuals. Yeah, but let's get into the kind of the Sue right?
Yeah. Sue McKinley.
Coming to India and making this project about freedom fighters based on the diary of her.
Diary of her dead grandfather, who was really apologetic about the fact that he was an executioner or something.
Yeah,
like,
it's that meme of, American soldiers will come back to America and then make a movie how sad killing Iraqis made them, like
it really is I didn't like the first time I watched this, it didn't really. No, it did actually. Like, I did be like, wait, her grandfather is who? Like, that did register.
Yeah.
But now, like 18 years later, I'm just like, the audacity of this woman to come to the country that her grandfather and her country colonized, and then be like, tum sala Indian log aisa kyun hai? Like, like, f you, lady.
Yeah. Like, I have nothing to do with this. You just like fighting each other. We gave you railways, nah? Like, aren't you like going on the train journeys together? Yeah.
Then it's sort of I think long time ago, when I used to have a DVD of this movie, the DVD extras where there is a director's commentary of Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra when he narrates over the movie, right? I saw a bit where he says why he included that "maa ki aankh" line, right? Because this movie is structured in a way to warm the young audience, and it's a movie for the youth, basically, to uh, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake sort of a message for the youth of this country. So it sort of welcomes you with the funny first, right? The marking arc happens instantaneously in the introduction. You don't expect this white lady to say, "Oh, I've been taking bloody Hindi lessons," and then the next thing she says is marking arc.
Yeah.
And it's such a PG rated gali, but also has the marquee associated with it.
But I think Sue's casting is they wanted to play against the stereotype of the Lagan white lady. I think this one speaks Hindi. This one knows the culture. This one knows she's going to get embedded with the youth and be accepted the way Elizabeth never was, right? So I think that's kind of the probably the juxtaposition that they want to take of, a foreign lady coming in and then being part of the culture. And then we took it obviously a step further when, Nargis Fakhri came and Nora Fateh came, which is apni ab, that kind of thing. Katrina apni hai, like, but she's working for a company called World Vision. And this is the one thing that I didn't note, and then it does. I wrote this down when I was watching this movie, and then a question, and then they actually answer it because when we watch the flashbacks, we're actually watching Sue's movie.
Yeah.
And that's why World Vision was not up to producing this movie, because ye company leke dubegi Sue. Like the budget this movie has, she's got like train heists and explosions, like all of these white people and brown people together. Like this was going to be a very expensive endeavor for
all
getting
shot
over
in sepia. Shot in sepia
to get over her familial trauma and her guilt of her dad, of her granddad. So
by the way, there actually is an organization called World Vision. They're international aid charity. Like one of my friends is like the Palestine country manager for them. And I don't think they're in the film production business.
They're not. After this movie, who could be? How could be? Soon Sara paisa. So that I did, and this is the thing that I feel Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra does a lot in his movies, like this duality that he always had. He had it very clearly in Aks, right? Where you have two characters kind of coming together. I love Aks. I don't know why that movie flopped. I really like it, although there's some really creepy elements to it. I hope one day we can revisit it, but I really liked Aks. And he does the same one with the love story he made, Mirzia, also like flashback, flash forward kind of thing together. And I think we kind of lost him now. Like he's just making like biopics, and I think Bhag Milka Bhag was maybe the last one he made. I'm not like maybe.
No, Mirzia came after Bhag Milka. No?
Oh, right. Yeah, he was. Delhi 6 also had those elements, right, of duality in it.
Yeah.
So he really, it was kind of a thing that he really connected with. But it's also just interesting to see how many of those filmmaking styles are so outdated now. Like the special effects are really outdated. Like the CGI really is jarringly bad. Also, a lot of times, I don't know what it's called, Sujoy. Maybe you know the term for it, but it's like it's a very choppy kind of background. Like they're moving the camera, and there's like everything is happening very choppily in the background.
Oh, it's a lower shutter speed.
Shutter speed, yeah, that's what I thought it was.
So you have 24 frames to usually 24 frames per second, but if you put it like a 15 frames or 13 frames, then it looks like a choppy movement. So that usually happens in like a Tom and Jerry cartoon and stuff like that. So that's what you see. But also, like if it is a fast scene, like in the protest or when they're brutally being beaten, if you shoot it on a lower shutter speed, it looks like an impressionist painting or something like that. Yeah,
it's just at that time it felt, oh, this is very young filmmaking, and now it feels like very old dated filmmaking when you look at it now, right?
But also from a Sue's perspective, she's just cutting cost by making it like that,
Kahin to bachao, yeah, and also just the fashion and the looks are so like of that era. Because Saif has that Amir has that Saif Ali Khan Hum Tum, Tom Cruise Mission Impossible haircut that he's got going on. But I have to say, and I think number one Amir fan, I think he does the best physical transformation between young Amir and older age Amir. Like they look completely like different people to me, more than anybody else. Also, there's more focus on him, but like the way his eyebrows are arched, the way his physicality changes, I think he does an amazing job in almost portraying these are completely different people. And it's just funny because, like, you know, when you look at the way the movie is supposed to be, is that DJ is supposed to be the most light-hearted character. You know, like he's not taking anything. So his evolution to becoming this person, I think, is very, very impressive. And I think it's also very well portrayed in Sue's movie then, where I was like, wait, are we in actually olden times or is she actually shooting it? And I thought that scene was really good when Bhagat Singh is kind of leaving his house and he leaves the letter for his parents, and then the camera pans to the other side, and then you see, oh, we are actually seeing Sue's movie and not like. And I think that's a really, really amazing shot. Because when I started watching this movie, honestly, I was like, this is one of those old 3-hour movies. I'm going to watch half now, and I'm going to watch the half later. But the second half is so good. It's so good that I just watched the whole thing. And I think, Sujo, you happened, like, Sujo texted me at 10:30, like, Asim, where can I watch this movie? And then, you know, like, you watch the whole thing too, right? Not because you had a chance, but it's so engrossing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some like amazing camera flourishes, as you call it. Like, you know, the cinematographer of this movie, Binod Pradhan, is my personal god to me. He's done a lot of work with Vidhu Vinod Chopra and, you know, and with Sanjay Leela Bhansali on Devdas and such. But like Rang De Basanti, there are amazing establishing shots. The whole Pathshala and Khalbali scene where they are shot in the Nahargarh fort. That's there's this scene where the cop beats them and the Haryanvi Jat cop says, "Banar ki dekhi se मार मार के वैसी लाल कर दूंगा हेरिटेज साइट में पार्टी करे से it's amazing. The dialogues of this movie are so quotable. But coming back to the visual flourishes, like the whole back and switch of the bit where, you know, their characters sort of merge in a way when they are having that conflict to decide if they want to kill the minister or not, right? And it connects and switches between the two, the Sue's movie and their real life counterpart, where what's his face, Rajguru, which is played by Sukhi in Sharman Joshi's character. He's the one that raises the question, मार देते सबको धार 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 धार, ये क्या बात हुआ, and all of that, तुमको क्या लगता है हम ऐसे कर सकते हैं? And then it switches back to Amir as DJ and then switch in. That particular scene was fire. And also, like, in the end when Amir just, like, you know, surrenders himself and he's looking to his left and Azad is on the right, that particular scene.
I love that shot. I love that shot. Yeah, that was really cool. How they connect through the past. It's funny because it's the past, but it's also just himself having played that role, right? So it's also with himself. So I just kind of love that.
And also, like, the whole the character evolution, because we start with Sid's character, Karan, who is the first one to join the production, right? And he's the one who convinces the boys to join. He's the one who starts reading Bhagat Singh and he says, like, Meri Dulhan to Azadi, aisa kaun bolta hai re? He has the least interest in this story. And then to see him change and actually believe in the word of Bhagat Singh is and to act upon it, which is
to the point that he kills his own dad. Like that's how much he believes in it, right? So I just love that evolution. Amrita, any standout scenes that really worked for you watching it this time?
That one, again, like, that was the scene that I remembered, you know, where Amir is looking back in true time to, like, his other self, and they both, and, like, that's the point where I start crying, like, every single time, like, you know, like, even when I just sort of, like, if I randomly come across that scene, I'll just start crying because it is just so emotional. Like, this is, you know, like, and maybe it's because we just keep watching so many terribly made movies.
Yeah.
But this is such a testament to the competencies of a good Bollywood director, whether it's somebody like Karan Johar or whether it's somebody like Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra. Because what makes a Bollywood director a Bollywood director is that they will always build their cinema to the emotional highs, and they're never afraid to get you to that point. Like, it's never like, oh no, like this is too emotional. Like, like what Sujoy was just saying, like aisa kaun baat karta hai, like that very internet specific, too cool for school, like like we can't be this emotional, like we need to be a little bit realistic, quote unquote. That doesn't exist in like a real like Bollywood movie. That's why like Amar Akbar Anthony works, and that's why this movie works, because it's willing to go to that place, however cringe you might find it as a cool kid. It's willing to take you to that point and then let you stand there for a minute and like feel those emotions. And we just don't seem to be able to make those kinds of movies anymore, and it's just so, yeah, it's just a very sad thing.
I have to point out something here. Back in 2006, right? This was the period of Indian Idol. We had just, because we have seen reality TV shows since the rise of the 90s when cable TV came with Boogie Woogie, Saregama, Antakshri and all of that. But Indian Idol was the one where we started enjoying humiliation, embarrassing auditions, right? And the story of, oh, he doesn't know, and that sort of also informed cinema in that era, where we have the whole university audition piece. That was comedy high for me in my 20s, by the way. That when that scene, like the first sort of big scene with Sue auditioning for her movie, and she has all these failed auditions. Nanne munne bachche teri muthi mein. I freaking laughed my head off. Yesterday it was more like, I used to laugh at this, because it's been done to death now with like Happy New Year and whatever. And who else did it? There was one in Aja Nachle as well, I think.
It felt very Farah Khan to me almost, like that kind of setup, like, but I personally never liked that. Like, I literally, the reason why I never watched any of it, because I cannot stand watching people get humiliated that way and, judges. So it was not something that appealed to me at all. And it felt very dated to me in terms of setup. Like, why are these auditions even happening with everybody, like cheering each other on and like making fun of each other? So that was quite funny. It's Amrita, you want to talk about the other actors we haven't talked about? Like, we haven't really talked about, Madhavan we haven't taled about. Is he wearing a wig, by the way, in this movie? Like, I was like, what is up with that hair?
I think that's just like Madhavan growing things out.
Yeah, it has like that floppy thing in the back. Like, I was like, what is this?
There's a line in Tanuved's Manu 2. ये आदमी है या अदरक कहीं से भी बढ़ रहा है. That's a Kangna Ranaut line, by the way.
Yeah.
She's had an eventful week.
Do we want to talk about Soha Ali Khan?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about Soha Ali Khan.
Or as Sue calls it, Durga Babi.
She's okay. I mean, like, this is the least annoying that I found Soha Ali Khan on screen, I think.
Which, like, I don't know anything about Soha Ali Khan as an actress, to be honest. Like, this is probably the only one that I didn't even remember she was in this, first of all. And it feels I didn't remember it necessarily. But I was thinking, what other movies of her have I watched? I don't think I've actually watched any, maybe, from her.
I have watched Khoya Khoya Chand, where she plays a yesteryear's actress called Nikhat. It's a Sudhir Mishra movie. I actually quite like that.
I have seen that,
and it was terrible, by the way.
99 by the Rajan DK movie.
Yeah, and there's what do you call Mumbai Cutting,
No, I
Seen
haven't
Mumbai
seen that.
Cutting.
Sahib Biwi or Gangster Returns.
Oh, she was in the first one, right?
Yeah.
Returns is the second one.
Oh, is
Second,
it?
she was in the
Okay.
second and third one. She was
Oh,
in Dil Kabaddi.
Nope.
She was in Ahista Ahista. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
None
she
of
was in
these
like
things I've really watched, or yeah.
yeah,
She was in Antar Mahal.
yeah. She was
the
in
Ravi
Antar
Kapoor
Mahal
one.
as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. She
So you
just
found it least annoying here.
Yeah, because in like most of her, she has a very particular personality. It's like very type A. And in most of the movies where she's just like playing shades of herself, she's just playing like a version of that character. And she's sort of playing a shade of that character here as well. It's just that her character here is meant to be that way. And therefore, like she's not annoying. You're just like, okay, like she sort of like fits into her surroundings. So you're just like, okay, fine, that's all right. Otherwise, she sort of just comes across like a Karen in like most of her movies, and I can't stand it. Atul Kulkarni, I have the biggest crush on Atul Kulkarni after this movie. Like,
Really?
yeah,
Like a racist bigot?
I know. I was just like, what is happening? But like, I was just like, it just came out of nowhere.
Amrita?
Yeah.
Amrita?
Yes.
Can you rehabilitate Sanghi?
Well, if he's willing to like beat up his other Sangees,
I
that's
can
okay.
change him. I can change him.
And then yeah, like and then Shaman Joshi was supposed to be like the next big thing, right? Like he was supposed to have like a huge career after this, and then he just went off and made like Rohit Shetty movies or whatever it is that he's doing.
He also, like, every time he's shooting a movie with Amir, he falls from a tall building. It seems like both of these things, like, also, speaking of Atul Agnihotri, sorry,
Kulkarni.
Sorry, Atul. This was probably where they talked about Lal Singh Chadda for the first time, right? Like that's where the idea germinated. Like that's what like Amir was saying, that when they were shooting it, that's when the idea came up. It's I find it, it's unfortunate that Atul Kulkarni didn't get the career that
Manoj Vajpayee did.
Yeah. Because like I was going through his filmography, and I was like, last he was in Khufia, and all the rest I don't even and he's such a powerful performer every time. Like it's a nothing movie, but I remember him from Dum. Do you remember Dum? He was playing this corrupt, lecherous cop, and he was so good at it. I really liked that movie. It was like a nothing burger movie, but I really liked it. And he just always has this like really powerful, like he's playing with such conviction when he's not that person, right? He's probably like but he was like super powerful. Like what did you think of Kunal Kapoor? Sorry, go ahead.
I need to bring back the conversation to something that we talked about yesterday when we were on the march. That how gay is this movie? How queer coded is it? That Aslam and Lakshman hold hands when they die. That Vijay and Sukhi shake hands after peeing, and yeah.
I mean, that was off cam. I was joking about it, but I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if they ended up just in a relationship at the end of it? Like that, all of this animosity is basically just, romantic tension. And, Aslam and Lakshman just need to bang it out, and then that would also solve out the problem of Sharman Joshi's line, "Main kuwara mar gaya." You give it to one of these two, and that also solves that issue that, nobody kuwara mar gaya. Like.
Also, there is a subtle reading of Sid's character Karan being secretly in love with Soha in this movie.
Yeah.
If we are keeping the queer code alive then because it's Pride Month and all. What if the read is that Karan is secretly in love with
Maddie's character.
Maddie's character, the Rathor, because he says, "Oh, sexy jacket and everything," and in his dream he always thinks of the sexy jacket.
It's not that sexy of a jacket. It's fine. The jacket is fine. It's not like something that needs to be pointed out 7 times.
Asin is just disappointed because it's not a sleeveless leather vest.
Tune into our Ek Ladka Ek Ladki episode for that one. But it is cool that he actually inherits the leather vest later on, right?
He
is wearing it
in the radio station.
Yeah, without making a big thing about it. He's just wearing it, and I thought that was really kind of cool.
Apart from the boys, obviously there's Wahida Rehman, there's Kiran Kher as the two mothers of that movie, and both of them are amazing. Like, Wahida Rehman does not get much to do in this movie, but apart from the Luka Chupi song, and that song always destroys the hell out of me. It just breaks me.
We gotta talk about the music.
The music. I was gonna get it. I just wanted to say about Kiran Kher, isn't she just doing the same thing she always does? To be honest, like, I'll be honest. Like, I know things have shifted, and we're not into the Mada Ladla era anymore, where we all loved it. But like both of the Khers in one movie, like it was a lot, like for me. I did like about Wahida Rehman that she then also stars in Delhi 6 later on. So Rakesh really connected with her. And I thought that was kind of cool because she hasn't been able to, be in that many movies. She doesn't care, I'm sure. But it's kind of cool to see her.
She's an wildlife photographer, you guys. You have to check her photography work. It's amazing.
Yeah. But it was just cool too. She brings just like grace and elegance to such a small role. It could be a screechy kind of like "Mera mom, beta mar gaya" kind of thing, but she does it with so much grace and elegance, even when she's getting beaten up by these cops and stuff like that. I think this is where the persona of somebody kind of elevates a small cameo role in a way. Yeah, for sure. But let's talk about the music a little bit, because we've had, on the BBC, we had this whole 90s draft and talking about, A.R. Rahman and stuff like that. And Harun on the show was asking me, what do you feel about Rahman in the 90s? And my answer to Harun was that I think the 90s weren't ready for A.R. Rahman yet. Like, he just changed the game, that much. But in 2000... this is where we really started to see Rahman come into his own. And I think this is a really good soundtrack, but because I don't think... this is my opinion. Like, for me, I'm a huge A.R. Rahman fan. This is not my top soundtrack of A.R. Rahman. Because maybe when I watched the movie, it was just a DVD movie and I was moving, and so it never had that impact to me. I never listened to the songs. But listening to them now, for me, this is a mid soundtrack for Rahman. I'm sorry if people feel offended by that.
How dare you, awesome.
But his mid is still so far beyond anybody else's good work, and I was just listening to the song and I was like, I miss Rahman so much. The only thing we had is Chamkila, and since that's it. But he would make this and Khwaja Mere Khwaja and like all of these other soundtracks. He used to just like churn them out one after the other. Tal, and like it was such a good time, and I miss it so much.
He went ahead and made Delhi 6 as well with Rakesh Mehra after this, right? Which is, in my opinion, a superior soundtrack to Rang De Basanti. But I cannot state enough that how big of a song Rang De Basanti itself was. The title track with Daler Mehendi, the ting-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. It
best
was
song Daler Mehendi will ever make, right?
I could not believe my ears that Daler Mehendi would sing for A.R. Rahman, even though he sang like Nachle or before this in, I can't remember that Sunny Deol movie, Lakir. But anyway, this movie has Ik Onkar, with the shot of the golden temple, Rang De Basanti, which shows the whole Punjab landscape, right, with the Mela and the Akhada and all of that. It's got Masti Ki Pathshala, which is Yappy song, I guess. But my personal favorite is Khalbali and obviously Luka Chupi. But everybody loves Luka Chupi. Khalbali is like, if you hear it it's one of those like it's like a Gupt soundtrack song. When you test a sound system, if you play Khalbali and it sounds good, that's how you know that it's worth buying that sound system. Khalbali is that track for me. It's amazing. I love it.
Amrita?
My favorites are actually the slower songs.
Yeah.
So, Tu Bin Batai is just I can't explain just how beautiful I find that song.
It blew me away yesterday when I was watching it. I was like, man, I haven't listened to this song because it's part of that soundtrack that I don't really listen to. But I was like, it's almost rediscovering a track by Rahman for me that I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Like, yeah.
But also in Rubaru, there is this there's this antra where Dhua Ghata, like
Chhatta Gagan Mera.
Yeah. That part, like if you're ever driving and you're like on a really great stretch of the highway, blast that song and just put it on like repeat, because it genuinely feels like you're flying. Like it is just the most gorgeous piece of music. And also the lyrics, everything is just perfect, like perfect when you listen to that song.
I would like to mention that since we mentioned reality TV shows before, Naresh Iyer, who sang Tu Bin Batai as well as Rubaru, came from a reality TV show which he did not win on Channel V called Super Singer, and A.R. Rahman was the judge, and he picked Naresh Iyer and he sang a few scratches and then he sang for Rang De Basanti after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the other song that I really love is Khoon Chala, which, like it's just this slow build up, and like it's sort of like an awakening of somebody's soul, it's like, like slowly as the music builds, you can feel the emotion build. And that's sort of like the reason why I feel like Rahman is such a king at what he does. Like he is not just the musicality, it's not just like the arrangements, it's also the emotions of like what he's able to make you feel by listening to that music. And it's just gorgeous. I love this album. This album's like one of my favorites.
I also loved, like, I'd forgotten, again, like I've said it many times, but I'd forgotten that Lata was on this soundtrack when Luka Chupi starts, and it almost like jarred me up, like, oh my God, Lata is singing. And then it's like, I don't know how many songs A.R. Rahman has done with Lata. I don't think there's a many, right? If I'm not mistaken.
There's the one in Pukar, there's one in Lagan, and there's this, I think.
Yeah. And I just loved that, A.R. Rahman is producing, so he's like, I'm going to sing with her. At that time, when Rahman is not the greatest of singers, he's like he has a very specific sound. And I think in this era, his Hindi wasn't even that good. It's vastly improved, but it's just beautiful. Like, he was like almost Kanye West-ish in that way, where I'm going to keep the best track for myself with the most legendary singer, and I'm going to sing with her, like, I just thought that was like, it feels like, he really takes ownership of the movie the music he's making, and there's something beautiful about an artist doing that, and yeah.
And I also appreciate the fact that, in Luka Chupi, when you have Lata Mangeshkar coming in, she's not singing lead for like an 18-year-old, like she's saying the song that is like clearly like being picturized on Wahida Rahman, and that is like another connection that goes back like decades, like Lata Mangeshkar was the voice for Wahida Rahman for all through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and then like all of a sudden you have Lata Mangeshkar is older, Wahida Rahman is older, and this song coming out is just gorgeous. I love it.
I'm going on Wikipedia while we were talking, because I was looking at the credits. This is crazy, man. Like, it's that era, but like in a press conference with pop singer Nelly Furtado, he said that she was to originally have featured on the soundtrack, although this was ultimately prevented from happening due to a change in producers and other factors. How crazy is that? And I could totally see that happening. By the way, I love Nelly Furtado. Like she's back and she is amazing. She looks amazing. She has a Tiny Desk concert, which I really check. You should check it out. It's so much fun.
Remix.
Because it brings us back to when we were younger, right? Nelly Furtado is kind of our age, and she was popping up when we were like at that age. So I think there's a connection there. But imagine, like, she was probably like, the faster star, either in Kalbali or in Pathshala, she would have probably featured, right? Maybe the rap was supposed to be her.
The rap. Yeah. Let's talk about the rap.
The rap.
Do we have to? Like, all these positive thoughts that we are having.
Pakistan, Bangladesh.
A.R. Rahman has some bad habits,
He loves rap and he doesn't get
and
it.
He loves Blase or whatever. Like,
he loves Blase. He loves Blase. That's the thing. And Blase is terrible.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you that. From the Minar of Qutub, from the Mahal of the Taj, from the Kumari of Kanya. I'm
my God.
Just stop. This is so cringe.
Yeah. I mean, Rahman has his things, right? Adding a bit of rap in there, which is usually terrible. Like, only good rap was Patti rap. That's the only good rap he's ever done. But he's been including it all the time, and also just the different choruses and the different voices that he's always been like. He just has things that he always comes back to. But yeah, the rap is pretty bad, and maybe Nelly should have done it. It would have been really, really cool if she could have. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Joy, about rewatching Rang De? Anything we forgot to discuss? We went long. I think this is a deserved low on laughs, maybe this episode, but I think we went deep. But I think it was deserved for this one.
For me, obviously, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
For me, obviously, the second half is much better because it just takes a different turn we did not expect coming. We were like, this is a 3-hour movie, and by the 90-minute mark, we still don't know what's going to happen, right? And that's a good sign. But the first 90 minutes that leads to there is exceptionally well written. I believe, like, the dialogues fly out, like, रात को जब सब सोता है तो राहुल रेडियो पे होता है and then Aslam says हाँ लेकिन सब सुनते हैं ना बीमार चौकीदार और उल्लू. That's such a line. What else? Like there were some really crazy, really good lines there that especially the one scene where Amir realizes that Sue can speak Hindi.
That's Hindi bolti hai, and he just can't get over it. He's just like looking at her and like But it's just that I think that's the kind of thing where I don't think we are supposed to like these characters at the start, who they are necessarily, right? Especially I think most of all in Amir's character, like. Amrita, would those seduction techniques ever work on you, for example, if Amir pulled those out on you?
Can you change him, Amrita?
No.
I'm getting the stare of death here, people, for just even suggesting it. Yeah, she was like, the Bajrang Dal guy, fine. But this, like
that tells you like a lot about how I rank these things. Like,
Any final thoughts, Amrita? Except sorry,
one more thing.
Please.
In my Netflix rip, the subtitles were on, and every time Amir says "Bende Take," the subtitle read "Grandpa's testicles" for some reason.
Okay. I didn't notice. Okay. Glad you included that thought.
I'm signing off with that, with my grandpa's testicles.
which is a perfectly good insult to use too in Hindi and Urdu, right? Like Punjabi maybe, but Amrita, go ahead.
I think I know that we sort of like ripped on the politics of this movie a little bit, which we had to, but I do think it is worth watching again, and it's worth watching in 2024 because we've all become Well, those of us who watched it the first time around, like we've had like a few, like almost 2 decades to sort of understand where we stand um, with regards to its politics. And I think people who've never watched this film, you'll find an introduction to an India that sort of existed very briefly for a time in the early 2000s. And also I think like a good understanding of what the centrist liberal stand was at the time, and I think like this is also the politics that a lot of people who identify as like liberal on or like classical liberals on Indian Twitter, like this is the exact kind of politics that they wish the majority would return to or would adopt. And I think the futility of the actions of the characters, eventually, I think that also tells you why it's a wasted effort for us to kind of try and adopt those politics again. Like it's not, I don't know.
I think it's interesting because it's the politics of Obama, it's the politics of Biden, it's the politics of Macron, it's the politics of Trudeau, all of these people. This is that kind of politics. But I think you can debate that politics, like I can be more towards this side or that side. It can be debated, right? But it does not necessarily come from an evil space. I'm talking about the movie. I'm not talking about Biden. Like I'm just bringing it back to I was using it as an example, but I think this can be debated, right? This is not hateful. It is hopeful. And I think that is something that has been missing, to just see cinema be hopeful again. And I agree with you. I think it's still a movie that works as a movie, even if you detach it from the political messages. And I also think it's an important movie to still watch. And I think it's a movie that holds up. And
it questions the government, and in a space like how India exists right now, I don't think that the bold statements that this movie makes is possible in today's landscape. Even when we have a coalition government in India, I don't know if movies have the balls to say the things that this movie says. Like when this movie is blatantly saying that the defense minister is corrupt, the then defense minister Pranab Mukherjee was made to watch this movie, and he said, "Yeah, that's fine. That defense minister is corrupt. It's not my job to censor movies."
It's so crazy, right? When you think about it, like it's so far beyond of where we are now. And I think we focus, because the movie is Indian, we focus on it India, but I think the problems that happened here happened globally. Like it happened everywhere, where this was a turning point in time, and where we hoping and working for things to become better, they actually went worse globally. And I think it's still a really powerful movie and a really important one. And I just gotta say, amazing of Amir to have made this. I don't think anybody else could have done it. Nobody would have understood the meaning of it, and championed it, promoted it the way he did. And it's one of his best, because it is an ensemble for sure. And I think that's another thing we a lot of times will say about Amir, that he dominates a movie, and here he doesn't, right? Although he is kind of the pivotal central character, but he doesn't dominate over everybody else. And I think the scenes that really work for him. Like even his breakdown with Sue, when he's really crying and he can't take it anymore. It's a super powerful scene. It's really, really good. So I just want to, kudos to Amir. Like we make fun of him, but this is exactly the kind of movies that, he was so good at, and, hopefully he can return to making, that's it. Sujoy, where can people find you online?
You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at 93K, and you can follow Khandaan Podcast on all our socials at Khandaan Podcast.
Amrita?
You can find me on Twitter at Amrita IQ.
I'm Erasim Bernie. Join our Patreon from $1 because now we will also be talking about a few other movies. We'll be talking about Furiosa and a few other thoughts, and like just hang around. And if you want to hear that hang around episode, a bit more free flowing, a bit more uncensored. Imagine this was censored. What's coming is uncensored. Join us from $1, and then you can kind of get those episodes too. Thank you for listening. Drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. That's it.